Hi, welcome to the Journey Back. Today we're going to be talking about kind of the polarities that exist within us as kind of an ongoing conversation around polarities. So one of the conversations that Meredith and I were having just a little while ago was this whole idea about the creations that we that show up in our lives, right? We're creators, right? Or so they say we are, or something says that we are. And yet we have these creations that kind of show up the way we want them to and kind of don't. And so, there's this piece of that where it's just a demonstration of the polarities within us, right? It's where we're divided within our own space or divided in our own thoughts. So, and so of course we're going to get, right, Meredith, we're going to get back what we, a clear demonstration or a clear reflection of where we're polarized within ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, we had just, as we were talking about it before, for me too, it's can we fully and wholly want what we want, and that's that kind of, you can have two sides of the story on it. It's like, well, can I fully expect that to happen, or do I need to start making concessions to it? And then that kind of muddies the waters.
Right. And I was listening to something the other night about where the speaker was talking about the fact that a lot of times we just don't tell ourselves the truth. We tell ourselves, we tell other people what we think they want to hear, or what we think is important to them, or how they perceive us. But when we get right to it, a lot of the creations I think that we create in our lives are because we're just not simply willing to tell ourselves the truth. I mean, literally starting with the truth within. So, the truth within can be, yes, I like this bit, but I don't like that bit. Yes, this is something that I want, but this other part is not something that, and to your point, I think that we've been programmed to believe that we can only have it a certain way. But if it goes back to that whole thing about actually being a creator, then the truth is that we get to have it anyway. Mm-hmm. We like, provided that we're willing to be truthful, right? About what it is we actually want, how we want it, where we want it, when we want it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and just back to that programming, and it's so fast, the concessions we make, and I don't know about you, I can remember as a little kid, asking for cookies for dessert or cookies for dinner, and to have that just shut down immediately. So you're like, can I even ask for what I want? Is that valid, or do I have to already kind of ratchet it back?
Right. Yeah. And I think too that it's also that place within us where when we start setting out what we really think we want, a lot of times that's really not what we want anyway. So I think there's another confusing bit there. It's like, so what is the programming of what we think we're supposed to want? And what is the actual reality of what we do want? Mm-hmm. And, and really telling ourselves the truth. It's, I think about so many people I really admire people who really live their truth, I guess is the best way to say it. So I watch a lot of people who in very, maybe mundane ways are just kind of going, no, this is what I believe. And so I'll give you an example. I remember being a kid and seeing a lesbian couple. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, oh, that is so cool. And it's like, what, and I remember my mom asking me, well, what made that, why do you think that's cool? And she had, at that moment, might have had a bit of a prejudice, or there was a certain reality around that. And it wasn't who they were or what they were doing. It was that they that there was a truth within them that went beyond, at that time, this was, you know, a long time ago, 30 years ago or so, 40 years ago. And so, but there was a truth within them that they were willing to express that was beyond what societal's truth was at that time. And I've always found that really fascinating in people. And, you know, you think about, there's that saying too that, you know, the people who really revolutionize thought and things like that are not typically the people who go with the status quo. You know, they're not the people who do what everybody else says that they should do. And they do what they believe to be true within themselves. And I think this goes right back to that point that we can create from the fullness of our being. We just have to be willing to be truthful about what that actually is.
And I'm also reminded of the vulnerability, because I liked your example of, you know, for me, a gay lesbian community, they have to work so hard to own who they are that it's beautiful, in my opinion, to, you know, watch that journey. But also I'm reminded of children have that same innocence about them and fearlessness about asking to fly, asking, you know, for all manner of things that we don't view as possible even necessarily, but they're just, there's a vulnerability in asking wholeheartedly for what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. And being willing to, I know I started a little exercise even last night of like just being truthful. You know, it's like, okay, I think all of us are kind of in this beautiful kind of pivotal place in our lives. You know, we're getting to live a new reality. And if we're getting to live a new reality, and if that reality is actually created very quickly, you know, now, more quickly than it ever has been, it's like, okay, well, let's get real. You know, it's like, let's get real and let's get truthful about, and what I was noticing is even to write it down on a page, that was just going to be, for me, and, you know, my inner awareness, just to write it down on the page, on the one hand was very powerful, and on the other hand was a little scary too, because it's like, you can feel your creatorship in the minute you write it down, because it's almost like saying, no, this is the truth. The truth is this. This is what I'd like to experience.
But don't you find too, the truth is interesting for me, because I find that in some ways there's very little that I can know is true. You know, if you've ever done any Kyron Beatty work, then it's just, so for me, when you talk about getting truthful, a lot of times, like the first thing I would write, you know, there's always this scaling back. Like, well, okay, so what do I really know for sure? I've already made an assumption, you know, like for me, I always have to catch myself on, okay, well, is that true? And especially when it comes to feelings, you know, again, that's one thing where I think polarity is breaking up, because it's like I can feel simultaneously terrified and happy and thrilled. You know, it's like you can't always pigeonhole those feelings, you know.
Right. And I think that what happens though is that the polarities within us, so, you know, we're all moving into new forms of everything, new forms of business, new forms of parenting, new forms of relationship. It's all up for grabs, right? Right now, there's so much, in some ways, there's so much freedom in how we can express ourselves now that was dictated in the past by societal kind of constructs. But those societal constructs aren't as, they don't hold as much weight as they have in the past. So now it's kind of like even telling ourselves the truth about, you know, well, this is what I was taught that I should want, but this is what I actually want. And that's what I mean by telling ourselves the truth. Not that it is the truth as far as like the capital, you know, T, truth, but it's almost like an opportunity to get real with the polarities that exist within us. Because once we start to examine, okay, all these polarities exist within us, and wouldn't it be fun to create something brand new? I think maybe it's not a bad idea to have that first step be, you know, okay, this is what's real for me. You know? And once you see those, I think that's what I was noticing last night as I was writing this out. It's like, once I see those, it's like, well, of course, this is what I'm experiencing in my outer landscape, because this is the paradox or the duality, the polarities that are going on within me, right? And that right there, to your point a little while ago, that right there kind of showed me just how powerful we are as creators. Right? Yeah. So.
Well, and there was something about when you were describing that list, and to see it all out, and then to kind of have that view of yourself as a creator and see why, you know, some things may be at odds with each other, and so there's not as much progress in one solid direction because but also it felt like, you know, that in and of itself brought you back to a sense of wholeness.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, and it also brought me back to a sense of being able to love all of those parts. You know, it's like having, or maybe if not being able to fully love all those parts, at least having access to the awareness of all of those parts. And I think that is, the awareness is the first part necessary, you know, before those pieces will kind of jive back together. Yeah, and sometimes I think the polarities that exist within us, I think we have been so conditioned to get rid of or attempt to get rid of certain aspects of ourselves. It's like, well, no, I'm not supposed to feel that way. I'm supposed to, and again, that's all programming, right? So if I'm supposed to feel a particular way, and I'm not supposed to feel a particular way, and that starts rising to the surface, what we automatically do is go, no, I won't tell myself the truth about that. I won't say that that's actually how I feel.
Yes.
Right? But it is how I feel.
It is.
And it's not until you kind of tell yourself the truth of it, then it can soften up again. You know, then it kind of changes and turns into something else, which is cool. So,
well, I know at other points you've talked about, you know, kind of that closing of the underworld. And I think, so we're just going to have more and more of that. It's like, I don't want to acknowledge that I feel that, believe that, but yet it's right here. You know, it's, yeah. And I know I've had a lot come up that I would rather, like you say, there's not enough wine in the world, right? And so it's, yeah, it's not, challenging isn't the right word. I just feel like there's such a, it's an invitation. And you know, one of the things I like to pretend to believe is that I do it all, is that this is, you know, if I'm the creator and I'm, you know, that it's up to me for better or for worse. And so, you know, I've just had a week of really a lot coming up and not wanting to deal with it directly. So just being busy and distracted, and finally having a moment of like, okay, so what, and just allowing it, and to feel, the first thing I felt and knew for myself was how much I'm supported, and you know, like just feeling just love and support, especially through my spine on, you know, whatever's coming up, and to know that, I think we do that, you know, we run from what's coming up, but then the minute you kind of stand still and look at it,
it's not so scary.
Yeah, you realize you're not alone, and you can, if you can't love it, there'll be something to support you in taking a step toward it.
Right.
You know, just from having had that awareness. You know, I think to your point, you know, to be aware of something and then to have that journey back, I think there's a lot more support for that unification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll kind of end things here and pick this up again in another video. But I think maybe a great place to start is just literally writing it down. You know, it's like, what is true? Any situation that's really kind of got us in at a crossroads, or you know, at a place of paradox within ourselves. You know, it's like we want one experience and we seem to be experiencing something else. I think it is a really good practice to just write down, you know, what is it that you really want? You know, not what you think you want, but, you know, what do you really, what parts do you like? What parts don't you like? You know, and giving that full list. So
and you know, layering in, you know, mentally, emotionally, physically.
Yeah, layering it through. So anyway, so thanks for joining us today, and we will pick up another video here pretty quick on just different topics around the journey back to self, and the journey back to self really through love. I mean, it's how else are we going to get there? So anyway, thanks for joining us today, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.